however you want to do it.
Okay,
Okay.
ready?
I am ready. Harris Wallaker.
Are you started?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Now we'll start out with birth. I was born on August 21st, 1940,
Okay.
in a little house east of Mineola Church. Fit several, 3-4 miles away from there. And when I was about 5 years old, my mother and dad moved to the farm on Highway 60, about 3 miles outside of Wanamingo.
Why'd that happen?
Because Dad was brought up a farmer, and at the time they had moved from the home place, Wallaker home place, to this area east of Mineola Church.
Oh.
And he was working up north. He was working, running a crusher up by Sandstone, someplace in that area, for a man from Wanamingo by the name of Benny Moe, which doesn't mean any difference then. But anyway, and he had a chance to go back to farming. So Mother Berdella had talked to A.K. Severson, and he was looking for a renter. And of course, he knew the family because Mother, where her
Okay.
house was,
Yeah.
was kitty court from where the A.K. Severson house was in Wanamingo.
Okay.
And so she rented the farm. And they moved there when I was 5 years old. The following spring, I was helping a little 5-year-old out there in the lawn, helping them rake the lawn, getting it away. So the fire wasn't burning very well. So I go with a little coffee can or little soup can, and I get some kerosene, and I spilled some on my pants leg. And so I got right up to the leaves, and I poured this stuff on the leaves, and all of a sudden it flared up. Well, it had caught my pants. And I got scared, and I started running. The wind was blowing, and I was running, and my sister Bev caught me. And she laid me down on the ground, and she pulled my pants off. And then, of course, my leg was burnt at that time. And my pants burnt up just a few seconds later.
Yeah.
So they picked me up and got me into the car, and I went right directly to the doctor's office in Kenyon. We had no doctor in Wanamingo at the time. And they took care of me there, coming back once a week or twice a week, having my bandage changed. And, well, first of all, he peeled all the skin off there, so it was nothing but raw meat on my leg. And all the nerve endings were showing, and every time he touched it, it hurt. And they had to clean the stuff off every time. But they made a mistake of putting Vaseline wraps on my leg. And so as time progressed, they couldn't sit in the same room with me. I developed a direct smell coming from my leg. And all of a sudden they had to see a different doctor. So the folks took me to Faribault, to a doctor by the name of, last name was Myers, the same as the doctor's name in Kenyon, only this guy was a little sharper. He took one look at my leg, and he sent me up to the University of Minnesota burn unit. And there I spent 2.5 months. I had 4 surgeries on my body. First one lasted about 3.5 or 4 hours when they grafted skin. The doctor that did the skin grafting was a doctor from Germany. Now, this is World War II time, at the end of World War II. And he came out there because skin grafting just came into his own during World War II, is what I was told. And they did over 1,000 stitches on my leg, piecing all the stuff together.
Yeah.
And then they had to go back in again because they took some areas too deep, and so they had to skin graft the area that they took skin off. Then they went back in again to make sure it was okay.
Yeah.
And then when I finally was done and I was healed, it took an hour and a half for them to get the stitches out of me. And so during that time, I had young nurses taking care of me, and they would let us burn unit guys get away with murder, even though I was only going on 6, you know. And so they'd have wheelchairs for us, and then they'd turn us loose. and they put a board out there, so I just had my leg raised up. And we had wheelchair races, me and this other guy, right down there, and the nurses got ticked off, because we're getting in their way all the time.
Yeah.
And then they'd take us up on the roof of the University of Minnesota Hospital, and they'd bring us chocolate malts up there, because we always liked chocolate malts. And even during the night, when I had penicillin shots every 4 hours for 2.5 months. And so my back end got pretty sore, but I lived through it. Then that fall, after I got home, I started first grade school at a country school called Spring Creek. It's on number 12. So if you went down south on number 1 and you hit number 12, you took a right, and right there, the first place on the north side is where the schoolhouse was. And there I spent my first 2 years going to school. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go there because I had spent so much time inside all the time in the hospital. So my sister Dell and I were there because Bev was older. Bev was about almost between 9 and 10 years older than me, and Dell was 5 or 3 years older than me. Anyway, I was always getting into my sister Dell's way as far as being a classmate besides being a brother. And one time she was chasing after me, and this was during lunch hour, and she was going to kill me. So I'm going to get you, and because I made her kicked off.
Yeah.
So I ran into the school, and there was a lady there. The teacher's name was Mrs. Ferris. She was a lady from Kenyon, and I jumped in her lap, and she said, my sister said, "You leave my Harris alone." So anyway, so that ended up, and then third grade I started in Wanamingo, and I finished in Wanamingo, going to high school and everything, right there.
Okay.
So I made it through that, and the humor was that Mrs. Ferris, she protected me. And,
So you were at that country school until what age?
well, when I was 8 years old, I came to Wanamingo to go to
So
school.
you're 2 years out of the
Yeah,
country.
yeah, because then they started bus service, picking up kids out in the country. And
So before that, you'd have to get dropped off by
yeah,
your
yeah,
folks,
our parents or whatever. And if there's bad snowstorm during that time, one of the parents would come in and say, "The school shut down. This is it, because it's bad out there, and the kids have got to get home."
were all grades together?
Yes, up through 8th grade,
So you could be in first grade,
and go all the way to
second
8th
grade,
grade.
and you were in the same classroom then
Yep,
with 8th grade.
Yep. So there may be 3 or 4 in their class each, and the teacher go from one to the other. And then here's another funny thing that happened. There was a superintendent that came out of Red Wing. His name was Diefenbach, and everybody was scared of Diefenbach. He'd come in and patrol, go up and down the aisle of the desks, seeing that everybody was busy. And of course, we've been instructed to be very busy, because if you hear the door open, don't turn around, just pretend you're busy. And you walk up and down, and he talked to the teacher a little bit, and he'd go on to the next school. This was his job as being a superintendent of all the out of town schools, country schools. Found out later, after I knew actually who Diefenbach was, he was just a little squirt. And we were afraid of this little guy, but he was just doing his job. So after all that happened, and I graduated from school, during high school and so forth, I played football and basketball. And
What year did you start playing sports?
well, I think at 7th grade, I think you had it called a C team, and it'd be everybody's guys. They're all Tom, Dick, and Harry's were out for basketball and so forth. And then they'd cut people, because they only could work with so many. And so if you certain time during that practice session, you'd see a little paper come on the door of the coach's office, who's being cut or who's staying out for practice. And this kept on, I remember, all through C squad and B squad. And games, as far as games were played, we played maybe at halftime sometimes. Maybe on a Saturday there'd be some teams from other towns who would play, maybe just a couple, 3 or probably at that time. And then we went on to the B squad. And there again, you know, you could be cut or whatever. And if you made it, you made it, and whatever. So I came down there, I think I was in my 8th grade year or my freshman year, and they were cutting people again. Anyway, my name wasn't on the board. I went up because the bus hadn't left yet, and I went up the stairs and sat down. And the head coach by the name of Merle Mayer came over and said, "Aren't you getting dressed?" He said, "Get ready for practice. My name isn't on the list." Well, he said, "It is now."
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those are things you remember. And went on from there to play both football and basketball with some injuries, broken wrist, and my knee got banged up, which stayed with me through life
Yeah.
until I got that fixed. And then I went, everybody was going to Luther College, okay? So off to Luther I went too. After the principal gave us a good recommendation, all this stuff. Oh, right before all this happened, during the spring of my senior year, I didn't play baseball. I did not. So we had some fool around time because we were seniors, you know. So a classmate of mine by the name of Harlan Bugon, he had this little firecracker, and we're sitting there and just being goofy, and he says, "Will you light this if I get up and step on it?" So we broke it in half, and I lit the firecracker, and he came down with his foot on it, which makes a lot of noise. Okay. As soon as he had done that, and the door opened, and here comes our study hall teacher, you down to the principal's office. We had our principal crying at that time. He said, "I've given you guys the best recommendation you can ever have to go to college, and now you do this to me." He said, "What am I going to do with you?" Oh, it was something. And so we sat there for about 10 minutes, and we had not driven in. We had ridden on the bus that day. And so he said, "You guys can go." And so, but he was wiping tears from his eyes, as he said. So ended up at Luther. Went one semester. Christmas time came, and I did not feel like I wanted to go back. And there's a story, one of the reasons why I didn't care to go back. I was planning on being into history. If I continued on with college, I liked history very well. And so my grades were doing just fine. I took biology. I had a lab in biology. I had a stake in Norwegian. I can't remember all the stuff. Anyway, in the history class, everybody wanted to be in this professor's class because he was supposed to be so good. Okay, so there was over 100 people in this classroom, and it probably was room for maybe 30 or 40, so desks were piled on top of that. Okay, I'd studied my lesson. I told my wife this, and it's made me angry when I think about it. Wait till today. I had a quarterback on the football team, and Luther was big football school at that time. And I was sitting like this, and his desk is right here in front of me, and he copied everything off of my paper to the point where I got called into the professors and called me for cheating. And I said, I'll take it again. I want to take it again. No, he said, you were caught. Well, that put a little bad feeling inside me to the point where I did not care to go back after that, because I think he gave me a D or a D minus for that course, for that, which tore down my grade point to the point where I wished I'd gone to another college instead of being at Luther College, where must have been about 7 or 8 kids, girls and guys from my senior class that went to Luther. And anyway, so that finished out to the end. I was done with school, and that spring I went in to the service.
How did you come to that decision?
Well, June's former husband and I were chasing around quite a bit at that time, and he picked up where the second semester, And so he'd gone to Luther too then. But he didn't like it. He didn't like it either. And to the point where it just was not a good fit. And he said, let's go in the service, he said. He said, I don't care about farming. I said, I really don't either. and so we looked at different places, and I applied to the Air Force. And they were taking just several guys every month because they had a quota to fill, and that's all they could take was two. Well, we checked with the Navy recruiter, and yeah, he said, you can name the day you want to go, he says, and we'll take care of you. We'll fly you to San Diego, and we'll do your boot camp in San Diego. We'll take care of all your shots and all this stuff down there and so on. And that's what happens. That's what we did. And it ended up being a very, very smart move when I think about it, because you learn a lot about life. You learn a lot about people that you associate with in your boot camp from other parts of the country. No matter what color their skin is, you're all in there together. You all get along. You hope to get along. And it went very well. One of the things happened during that time, we came to the end of boot camp, and in the Navy and Air Force are always testing you, different types of testing, aptitude tests going on the whole time you're in boot camp. And we sat in this big room. So my company, which was Company 247, had little over 100 people in our company. And he says, as your name is called out, you'll receive your orders when you leave this room. So names were called out, and 5, 10 guys go, another 5, 10, 15 guys go. It was down to about maybe 8 dozen people left in that room. And I said to myself, gosh, I really screwed up. These guys got orders and I'm still sitting here. Maybe I had to do the whole thing over again. Oh, we had a chance to pick the school we wanted to go to. We got school, and the other guys went out to the fleet.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I kind of liked health and so forth when I was in high school and so forth. I had more interest there. And watching these corpsmen giving shots and so forth, I can do that. And so I went to corpsman school then at San Diego Naval Hospital, which was a big hospital right along this Balboa Avenue, and you call it Balboa Naval Hospital. And right down the road from there with this great big zoo. If you ever get to California and you ever get to San Diego and you get a chance to go, it's supposed to be the world's largest zoo. Yeah. And it is fantastic. So anyway, that was another plus. Not that we spent all the time in the zoo, because no, we went to school. And then this is my first taste of going to Tijuana, Mexico. Okay, take the bus about 15, 20 minutes down right to the border. That's where the United States bus would let you off, and you had to walk across this bridge into Tijuana, Mexico. It was not a good fit. It was not good, but we could go down and we could drink. We could drink because I was 18, 19 years old. I could have a drink, and nobody would look over my shoulder. Okay. Anyway, so this went on, and we did that, and I ended up in the Tijuana jail. You ever heard of the Tijuana jail?
What?
Everybody should go there sometime. We were at this bar. I think it was about 4 or 5 of us guys, and they had this MC, or what do you call him, getting up there and making all these funny jokes and so forth. Well, we probably had a couple of drinks to the point where we were lipping off at him, and he was getting a little angry with us. And all of a sudden, we had a tap on our shoulders, and they picked us up, and we went for a little ride in a little paddy wagon to the Tijuana jail. And then to get out of that thing was something else, you know. So they have shore patrolmen, officers, and enlisted people. This is all they do, is get people out of the Tijuana jail, because this happens every day. And what an experience. that's another experience.
Oh boy.
That's almost as bad as my time in being working at excuse me, at the Naval Hospital in Camp Pendleton. That's where I ended up for my first duty station after going through boot camp in school.
Okay.
And we had gone out to Pasadena it was back in 1960, and we were at Pasadena trying to get into the football game because the Gophers were out there. Okay, and I think I told you this before, but that's beside the point. But anyway, there again, I visited the Pasadena jail. It was very nice, very to the point where I'm glad I never gone back again. Anyway, one of the friends helped us get out of this jam. We ended up going back to court, and we could have been fined, but we did not. We were able to, arresting officer was able to talk to the judge and said, "You'll never see these guys in front of you again,
Yeah.
Your Honor." And he didn't. He didn't. Not yet, anyway.
Right.
And so, that's what happened to me during my life there. And then I got my orders. I could have gone with the Marines and be a FMF, and be a fleet Marine. In other words, you travel with the Marines. You go out in the field with them, you dig foxholes with them, you do everything because you are a medical person.
Yeah.
And I got the other chance was to go on aboard ship. And I worked at a medical supply about the last year I was at Camp Pendleton Naval Hospital. And I heard that the division officer was very good at finding ships for people who wanted to go aboard ships. And so he called me into his office, a great guy. He said, "What size ship you want, Mr. Wallaker?" And I said, "The bigger the better, sir." He says, "Well, I got one here for you." He said, "I think you got to go up to Bremerton, Washington. That's where you'll catch it." And that's where I caught it. I caught a ship in dry dock.
Did you taxi up there or bus or how?
Well, this was back at the time when your mother and I were married. And we got married, I think, on the 21st of December of 1960, I believe. And my wife was raising her hand. 61, honey. Okay, 61, honey. And good thing you remember. But anyway, and so leading up to going aboard ship, I had an uncle that lived in Santa Clara, California. And he was, Gus Dumrose was married to my dad, Edith Wallaker. And so they had a big construction company there in Santa Clara. The oldest one in the Bay Area. They would call Uncle Gus in for all the bids. Nothing ever happened around the San Francisco area, and as Uncle Gus had his fingers in it.
Okay.
And so Sandy stayed there with them as I flew up to Seattle, Washington, which was another experience. You know, you get all these experiences when you're traveling around the country. This one was a big one because I flew into Seattle, and it was out in the country. So you took this bus into downtown Seattle, and I got to find the harbor. Okay, so directions. I was carrying my sea bag and a duffel bag in uniform, and you get on the harbor, and I got down there, and I was picked up the last ferry going across to Bremerton, Washington. It took about an hour by ferry to get to Bremerton. And then I took a taxi when I got there down to where my ship was in dry dock. And when I looked at that thing, I said, "I can't believe that thing will float in the ocean." That thing was so darn big. You know, you can figure over 3 football fields long.
Yeah.
When you picture a football field, and you put 3 of them in plus another 40, 50 feet.
Yeah. And then high.
And so you pull up along there, and this, oh my gosh, I got to go aboard that? And so I did. And I got up there, You got to salute the flag, and then you got to salute the officer when you're coming aboard. And reporting for duty, you'd tell them, and you saw I was a corpsman, and so you'd whistle down, and you got me a Marine to come up and carry my duffel bag down to sick bay. When I tell my Marine friends that, they just look at me like, oh, you didn't realize us corpsmen were taken care of very well. And very well we were taken care of, and food and everything, it was remarkable. I made a good choice, because there was so much to learn. And one of the funny things about being aboard ship, we were up in Bremerton, and we're getting ready to go to sea. So we had a big personnel inspection. That means between 3,000 and 4,000 guys up on the flight deck, all in your companies. And it was colder than heck. Bremerton's one of the coldest places when you got all the breeze coming out of the ocean and coming up the channel up there. And you're standing out there and you're getting colder and colder. If you imagine, you've been cold many times, I'm sure, and so you know when you got this cold breeze, it just goes right into your bone.
Yeah.
And our medical officer, he turned around and he says, H Company, right face? And we all did. And he said, forward march. He said, we're going back down to sick bay. And so we did. Okay. And down there we went into his office, and he brought out a little stock of brandy he had on hand for giving people who go into the drink. This is true. Yeah. Okay. A lot of times when we have helos drop in, when we get them back aboard after they've been taken out of the water and so forth, go down and have a little knipper, and there we were when the actual captain called. Where was H Company? H Company was right here, sir. We had things to do and we couldn't stand up there any longer. Your excuse, he said. So we're okay.
So was it hard to be a small town young man? Now you're on a ship with, I don't know how many people, a couple thousand people, or?
Yeah, I would say somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 on there. Yeah, so it's a floating city.
Was it easy for you to transition into that, or was
they
it
made
difficult?
It was started out difficult, but it made it easier as time went on. And we were treated as well as if I had gold braids on my shoulder. We had a little kitchen there down in sick bay, and we'd be out at sea and be on a weekend. And being the mess cooks like us so well because they like to come up and see our movies. Officers got first choice on movies, then the sick bay got the next choice. We had 25 or 26 beds hospital there besides, so we could. And so they'd come up, but they'd bring hams, they'd bring steaks, they'd bring all this stuff, and make sure that we had plenty of coffee, because that's where I learned how to drink coffee, by holding my finger cup. And then, there was a time when I got woke up one time, and I had the duty bunk. They called it duty bunk. So there's a little light on right by your bunk, and you sit and you lay in this one special area, the sick bay, and something happens during the night, you get woken up. Well, it happened to be a Marine, and he happened to be a black guy that needed help. He had cut himself, and he was bleeding. He had opened him up maybe about 2 or 3 inches on the scalp, which scalp wounds bleed very, very bad. And he was not happy. He wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. But we got the job done. We took him in. I cleaned him up. I cut around the area around the wound and got that all cleaned and as best as I could do. And I deadened the area and I sutured him. We did everything, see. And I got finished with him, and he got off the table, and he actually thanked me and hugged me for taking care of him. He said, "Yeah, I didn't feel a thing," he said, "and I was hurting so bad." So that was one of the experiences, and here I got right here. I'm backtracking a little bit. December 21st, 1961. marriage. Board ship,
Was I right?
Yeah.
100%.
I was worried that I made a mistake.
No. So anyway, my ship got to be in the recovery ship. So that meant we left my home port was Long Beach. Your mother came down to Long Beach, we got an apartment and she was there, and every day we hung around. Of course, there was about 4 or 5 of us guys who were married in the service, and we had to be at work at a certain time. We all had apartments, and so we'd all ride together. Wives would take turns driving us to the harbor to get aboard ship.
Okay.
There was a bridge that went up to let ships go out to sea. And if you got there before then, you were fine. If you didn't, the thing stayed up until all these your vessels would be going through. And then you'd probably end up being late for work. So we had to leave plenty early because these drawbridges would do this. And then every little vessel, no matter if it was a destroyer or a carrier or whatever, that thing stayed open until everybody was gone. And then it would, so the cars would line up for maybe a mile sometimes, so trying to get over, because there's a lot of sailors going to work.
Yeah.
And so we left your mother stayed at Long Beach. She got a job at, I think, at Long Beach Community Hospital. And I think she was doing brainwave studies. I think she was hooking people up, different things, checking for tumors and stuff like that. And I think she enjoyed her work very well. So from Long Beach, we went down to San Diego. We had just a few hour free time, so we could go shore at San Diego or what. And a lot of us, we just stayed aboard because there was always some that went aboard or went to shore and got in a little trouble just for a few hours. It didn't take long.
Sure enough.
And then we left there. We picked up. Being we had this new sonar on us, there was a submarine out there out past Breakwater, and as we were leaving Breakwater, we picked this up, and then we picked up a signal from a Canadian cruiser that had been following this submarine. And we followed this submarine all the way up to the Alaskan border. Now, this is on our way, a long way of going to Hawaii, to Pearl Harbor. That was our next stop, but we had to follow it until we gave the Canadians back this ship, because this was being in our area, we had to patrol it right along our coast. And it was a Russian submarine. Russian submarines were all over. And we practiced out of Pearl Harbor with our recovery ship because as time came, we went out in the area right around Midway Island, which if you look in your map sometime and find out where Midway is, and you find out where Pearl Harbor in Hawaii is, it's a distance. And we were there, and we watched the chutes open up, and down came our, what do you want to call him, our astronaut or whatever. And his name was Wally Schrar. He was a commander in the Navy, and we got on board ship, was able to do some tests on him. I was working in that area where I used to have to check pilots out before they could go. Every so often they had a pilot physical, and you make sure their eyesight and everything was okay.
Yeah.
And I could sign my name on them and disqualify them. Oh, I was really a bad boy, I tell you. And anyway, and this guy, this Wally Schrar, we followed him down into the hangar bay, which is right below the flight deck. And breeze was blowing through there, and the guy I was with, his white hat fell off from the breeze. And here's Wally Schrar picking it up and handing him his cap, and you got a picture of that. And down the sick bay, he was just so cool. He was just, all these guys were just quality people. So it was an experience.
Yeah.
At the same time, one of my friends was in the office on the phone because it was coming from the White House. The call was coming from the White House, and he was talking to some doctor who was there at the White House, keeping the lines open until the president could get there and talk to Wally Schrar. So that communication was happening right as I was there. That was so cool.
That's neat.
Yep. And trying to think what else. Getting out of the service was quite a deal. I got flown back from Pearl Harbor to San Francisco at Travis Air Force Base, and I came back on an Air Force plane. And we had a lot of dependent wives and people going to different duty stations, and this big mat plane they called it, and it was a slow ride, about 200 miles an hour, and then all these babies were crying at the same time. And so when we landed, it was quite a ride from down in Pearl Harbor back up here at that speed.
I'm sure.
But we made it, and we came into Travis Air Force Base, and it was very, very impressive. There was all these jets, all these heavy bomber jets. I can't remember the number of them, but they were one of our top bombers, and the runways were just loaded with these things. It was just unreal. And we'd come in with our big putt-putt, And from there we went to Treasure Island, and that's where I ended up getting departed from the service. I got through all the paperwork, and that took about a week. And then I went from there, and we took a taxi from Treasure Island. Oh, what the heck? Wait a minute. Got to back up here a little bit, people. Left Treasure Island, and I caught another plane that could fly down to Long Beach. That's where your mother was, in her apartment down there. And from the airport in Long Beach, me and 3 guys took a taxi, and we were all living in kind of the same area. And so we took that taxi and got off, and then I was done. Done. And then we decided to take the car and head back to Minnesota. And so that was another drive because we
You met me, remember?
I met June, and Dwayne was down to my aunt and uncles. This is backtracking now. We went back when I was, Sandy was living up at Santa Clara with my uncle and aunt, and they came down, and so I think we had Christmas same time that time or whatever, and it snowed that one time, and we were all throwing snowballs at each other. And I think that she's got pictures of that. It was one of the few times it snowed in San Diego, or in
Long Beach?
in Santa Clara,
Santa
California.
Clara, okay.
Yeah.
It hadn't snowed for 25 years, and we were there at Christmas. for sure.
So yeah, we spent weekends down there because June was staying there. Sandy was staying there and working there until she came down to Long Beach.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's where my ship was home ported. See, all these big ships have home port.
Okay.
And
yours was Long Beach.
yeah,
That's where your ship was.
Yes, yeah, right.
Okay. So when you came back to Minnesota, where did you go?
Went to your grandpa and grandma Fredrickson's place
Okay.
and spent some time there.
They were
On the farm.
Out
Yep,
there.
Out there on the farm, yep. And then we decided, I took a job, just to get a job. I took a job fixing and selling Singer sewing machines. Now, this is fantastic, and everybody that lives in this country should sell a Singer sewing machine. In fact, it was so good that I think I was paid so much a week, plus every one I sold, I got a commission. Well, this went on for probably, I don't know, half a year or whatever. And then your mother's brother, Chuck, was running the land and farming or milking cows for his uncle, Russell Boris. And but he was leaving because he was going to go back to school. He'd been in the service, and he was what you call a kiddie cruiser. He got out before he was 21, so he spent about 3 years in the Navy. And my time was about 4 years when I was in. And so I decided to do that, so we bought a trailer. So we parked the trailer out there on Russ Boris's farm. And I farmed for a while and milked cows and helped your grandpa and so forth. And then as time went on and the cows yield a lot of milk at a certain time, maybe during the lactation time, maybe out of the 8 or 9 months that they give milk, maybe about a little over half they milk very well, and then it starts dwindling and then you dry them up for a while. And so the milk checks weren't so big, and that's where your mother started working for Dr. Walter. And so Kimmy was born in 1964, possibility.
Yep.
And then your sister was born, and on Good Friday, on Easter Good Friday, her and a nurse of Dr. Walter's nurse OR nurse and I made a trip to St. Mary's in Rochester because Kimmy was not doing well. Kimmy could not keep any food down. Kimmy was projecting it. She was dehydrated, and so she spent about a week at St. Mary's. And this was a very hard time for us at that time. And then we got her discharged to be under the Doc Walters care, and so he took right over because Sandy had worked for Doc and still was working for Dr. Walter. And so he ended up getting special care and all of that. We fed her more times, more often than small amounts each time. Eventually, then she came.
Sure.
And she started until she grew up.
Yeah.
Yep. And with Kimmy being born, and then a little over a year and so what, Chad was born. But Chad was born in Otana
Why was that?
because we moved. We took the trailer with us and moved over to Otana. And I got a job at Marigold Dairies. And that job was kind of hard because I had to learn 4 different milk routes, door-to-door milk routes in Otana. Plus I had to learn 2 ice cream routes. Plus I had to learn a country milk route that went to all the different schools, country schools. There were schoolhouses, these little schoolhouses open all over Steele County. And so I found them. I had to find all these places and deliver milk. So I had a lot of paperwork done because I had to figure out where I'm going to drive here and to go here. And I had all these places I had to stop and make sure I did the same. It worked out, excuse me, but it was a trying situation. And then once a week, we'd get in ice cream at Marigold Dairies in Otana. So I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning, going into this cold ice cream freezer, me and the foreman there, and unloading the semi of ice cream. And if you didn't think that was fun, the only thing came out of that, he bought me breakfast afterwards.
No.
I really felt very important at that time. Okay, so we lived in there for about 3 years. During the last year, I think, living in Otana, I worked for Gross Industrial, and that was a uniform rental place. In other words, a lot of people in gas stations, different companies that have warehouses or people working with having the same clothes on, shirt and
So you
pants.
guys would pick them up, clean them,
Pick them up and
deliver
bring
them?
them back and deliver
Sure.
them. Yep. Everything was marked and their names on them, everything, and so we did that. And even the rugs you come into places, had these big rugs, catch dust and so forth. Did a lot of stuff over at St. Olaf College and also over there, because I covered Faribault, I covered Otana, Blooming Prairie, Austin, Northfield. So when I went on the road, I had a pretty good route.
Yeah, that's a pretty good route.
But it was, the money was pretty decent, and I enjoyed. I got to meet a lot of good people and so forth too. And, but then we came back to Wanamingo. Houses for sale down here, and I was able to buy the home that you kids were born.
So somebody must have said, "Hey, you guys should come back" or something.
Yeah, I think that your grandparents did, and my folks and so forth there. But going back to Chad was born in Otana, and here's another story about that, because here's Chad. Okay, we got Kimmy, and your mother was pregnant with Chad, and we had the baby, and it was a boy, and so I was being pretty cocky about having my first boy. I had a daughter, now I got a boy. And so I take some of the guys I was working up at the hospital to see this little guy in this little crib, you know. And one of the nurses down there, oh, she was funny. She said, "No, you can't bring those guys in unless you bring some nutmeg, or what the heck is it? That stuff you drink at Christmas time."
Eggnog.
Eggnog. There, I said nutmeg. Okay, what a mistake I made again. Anyway, so I think we all brought up a quart of eggnog, and so you bring them guys every time you want it. He said, so we come up and see Chad, you know. And so then we had an apartment over by Otana School, and then we moved from there, and there's a train tracks right through the heart of going west through Otana. And on the other side of those tracks, there's a house. It was a two apartment house, and we had the bottom apartment. And so that's where we lived there until we came back from Otana.
Okay.
And then, as we've been back to Wanamingo, somebody else came, Kyle. But he was born in Sombrota, and so 2 of 3 kids were born in Sombrota and 1 in Otana.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's been a party ever since.
Did you, when you moved back to Wanamingo,
Yes, I got a job working at the grain elevator in Wanamingo.
did you buy that house right away?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so right when you moved back, you moved into the house.
Yeah, and the paperwork was taking time because the guy that owned it, it was a fuss-on house to begin with, and this guy that was managing the creamery here in Wanamingo, and he got a job down in Texas, and he had to come back and forth between that to get the house closing, all this stuff. Finalized at the bank, and finally we got the key to move in.
Okay.
And Phil, your uncle Phil, and I did all the hauling, and this was quite a treat because he was so good, so helpful, and I miss the guy. I do miss him today. But here's another funny story. We stopped and we got our last load, and so we stopped at the Eagles Club, and I had Chad with me. And went into the Eagle Club, and we had to get something to drink. So we had something to drink. I think we had a couple of brandies or whatever. And as we're talking, and ran into some guys I knew there, and here's Chad sitting in my lap now. You know, he's what? Could be possibly 2 years old, maybe, I don't remember, but there's some straws in these drinks, and he was sipping it. And we got back to Wanamingo, and Chad got sick, big time. Anyway, I did make very good points that day, but when I think back about it now, I did a dumb thing, but I never paid any attention to it, you know, yeah, but, you know, those ice cubes and stuff at the bottom, and he was thirsty, you know, and I never thought about, you know, but we made it through that, and got into our house, and you guys grew up in that house, and
What year was that then?
Okay, so it had to be service in '63, and I would say it had to be pretty close to the time that you were born. You were born
Around
in
68.
'68.
Okay.
I'd say maybe '67 or right in that area. I probably got the paperwork back in the office. someplace.
And you're at the elevator then?
Yep, so I got a job at the elevator, and that got to be another learning situation. And spent many hours at the place and worked there for 23 years.
23.
And then when that got bought out, and I started thinking about what to do, and you came back, you made a little trip out west, you started school at La Crosse, and you went there a couple of years, and then you sat out during the time of your mother and my dissolution of our marriage, or dissolve, or whatever, of our marriage, and then you went out to see a friend out there in Washington. I believe he was in the service. Neil, somebody?
Neil, yep, it was San
Yep.
San Jose, California.
Oh, you were in San Jose. Okay. Anyway, and then one day I got a call, and you were saying you're coming back, and you're in Denver, I think, and you're flying in from Denver, and I'm going back to school, Dad. Okay. And you did. So anyway, yeah, so it gets to be a long, long story of things that happen. I can't think of anything right now that I can add to that, except the fact that you kids grew up, you became your own person. Your mother and I are very proud and extremely proud, and our grandchildren, it couldn't be any better. And during that time then, after so many years of me leaving, excuse me, when the elevator got sold and I did not have a job, and I was thinking about things to do, and I went back to school, and I think I was 50. I think I was 50 or right around there, and went back to school, and I got into the nursing training program at St. Mary's in Rochester. And I thought if I was going to do this, I wanted to go possibly at the best I could do. And
How did you come to that decision?
Well, being a corpsman, being through that ropes before.
It stayed with you a little bit.
So a lot of this stuff came back to me as I went to school. And I was working, or not working, but going to school with a lot of good people there too. And I think they gave me kind of a fatherly figure, because I was 50, a lot of them were in their early 20s.
Yeah,
And I remember in nursing school, I would got to know this one gal. Her dad was president of the bank in Plainview, and she was just a funny gal. Her boyfriend, her fiance, was going to engineer school up in cities at University of Minnesota, and so she was aching in her back one day. We're sitting back there in nursing class, and so he rubbed my back, she says. And so I rubbed her back, and so one day I was aching, so she rubbed my back. And so then every day we rubbed each other's back in nursing school. It was so funny. And so one day I was standing up there, I had to talk to our instructor, and actually this instructor was the head of the nursing school, and Mrs. Toddy, and she was something else.
I remember you talking about her.
She was so good. Anyway, I was waiting my turn, it was about 3 or 4 of us, and somebody else came up behind me and started giving me a back rub. And there I'm waiting.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Toddy said, "Did it feel good, Harris?" Oh, there was a lot of funny things along the way. And then when I got through at school and I applied, I figured using my military whole situation there, I might as well make use of it, but I might come out ahead on it. And I did. I got in, I applied at the VA after I passed my state boards, and that was a plus, because it wasn't, the state boards was not easy. Isn't easy for anybody, and it wasn't any easier for me. And what a feeling that was to pass. I remember running into Pastor Lundquist the day I got my little letter saying that you passed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I showed him, I was on my way over to Mother and Dad's to show them that I had passed. And, oh, Gary was so happy. He was such a good guy. And went up there to the VA and went through orientation and made that, and worked with some great people. Worked with some very great people.
How long were you at the VA then?
A little over 10 years.
Oh, 10 years.
And then 4 years with the Navy. So when I received what do you call it? Immunity, or no, what? Anyway, I get so much from the government every month. Yeah, because of my years piled up. Anything over 10, you get so much.
Did you think at all while you're employed at the VA, man, I should have done this right out of the Navy?
And you know, yes, I thought
You did think-
many times, you know. And if I'd have gone another year, I could have been a associated RN. But I knew I had to get aboard and start working. I couldn't, you know, I wasn't financially fixed.
Yeah.
And to the point where that would have been great. But it still turned out well.
Very well. Yeah.
And worked with great people.
Did you enjoy that work better than your time at the elevator? If you were to compare, were they just so different, or were they?
There was no comparison.
You really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, I had environment not freezing every day. Working at the elevator there was days in the fall and working with these corn dryers and doing all this handling of different things and freezing out there, working on something that's broken down and all this and that, and spending hour upon hour. You know, my falls were close to 80 to 100 hours a week. And it was, when I think back, I should have got out long before that, but I didn't, because I got to be a fixture, and there I was. I wasn't doing what I should have done. So when you make a mistake, so forth. And then, as time went on, up there at the VA, and getting close to thinking about leaving, then June Ann comes into my life.
And how did that happen?
Well,
Wasn't it your sister?
how did that
Your
happen?
oldest
So
sister?
I was on a trip to a family wedding in California, and I had my sisters. Their husbands stayed home, and so it was me and Dell and Bev. And one of the ladies I worked with at the VA wanted to go to California. She'd never been there. So she came along, and she was just a co-worker and so forth. So there was nothing there at all, except that she just asked if she could go with, and I couldn't say, no, you can't. So anyway, she made the trip with us, and we went up to San Francisco and so forth. And so my sister started